Hey everybody, this is Modern Refugee. I have seen a lot of videos recently that were sort of AI generated that were, your list of things to get if SHTF happens, these kind of things. And I chuckle at some of that stuff because I've actually had real world experience. A little bit about my background: I've spent over 30 years in a retail setting, and I've seen multiple what we call today panic buys. But years ago, we just used to call runs on things. I have seen multiple different runs on items over the years, kind of culminating with what happened and took place in 2020. And there were some specific things with that too that that I sort of seen several days before the mass pretty much hit. And now there can be different events that cause these runs on items. There can be civil reasons for it. There can be natural events like storms. Power outages were a huge one. Power outages can happen at any time. That's not just for bad weather, that kind of thing. They can happen for a multitude of different reasons. Now, the first thing that I seen goes all the way back to 1995, and it's your freedom seeds, what we call online now freedom seeds. Those expendable items that go inside defensive implements. Though that is the very first thing that goes, and I have seen this on multiple different occasions. The first time was a certain event that took place in Oklahoma City back in 1995, if I remember correctly. That was the first time I seen a run on those particular items. Everything was wiped clean. The second time was that fateful morning in September of 2001. That was another time where there was a complete run on that stuff, and it was all gone, all sold out. Multiple runs on those items since then. Every time that there's some type of incident that goes back to those type of items, there's a run on it. I seen it for political reasons. When Obama was elected, there was a big run on it. There were several runs with different of those unfortunate incidents that I was talking about, several different runs on that. And then, of course, 2020. And I myself have always got a little bit ahead to make sure that I always have some here, because I know from experience this is the first thing that goes. Now, I've always split that into hunting purposes and, personal protection. But I have sort of changed in the last couple of years. Since the pandemic, up till the pandemic, I always felt I could go out and I could hunt if I had to. But since 2020, the demographic in my area has changed, and a lot of that has to do with people moving in here that weren't in here prior to 2020, and it has kind of threw everything upside down and around. While there's still wild areas and stuff around here, the hunting pressure has increased to a point now where I'm not really seeing it as a benefit to factor that into my preparedness. And I've never been like that before. That's just been in the last year or so here, when I always thought, I could go out and get a animal to feed my family. I'm beginning to think that that isn't the way to go, just from my own personal experience. And I believe that that's a indicator, canary in the coal mine, if you will, on how things are going to be in the future. So while I still have that stuff here, I still have those skills, and I still have that equipment, I'm not relying on that quite as much as I used to. But those freedom seeds are the first thing that has went in every run that I've seen over the years. The second thing is fuel. Now, again, that's something that you don't see a lot of people talk about when you talk about these different panic buys or runs on items. Fuel is needed for a lot of different things, and a lot of the fuel-related runs that I have seen were either power outages or they were some type of weather-related event. Now, and it wasn't always necessarily fuel for vehicles. It was fuel for stuff like small, what we would call camping-related appliances, so people could continue to cook and have light. Those are the two big things: heat and light. Heat can be to keep yourself warm, and then two for cooking your food. And then, of course, light. Human beings have grown accustomed to just flipping a switch, and having illumination. That wasn't, hundreds of years ago, that sort of wasn't the thing. People lived more by the sun. They got up with the sun, they went to bed with the sun. But now, in our modern era, we've become so accustomed to lights, people really can't live without that lights anymore. So things like batteries, flashlights, battery operated or gas operated lanterns. Propane is probably the fuel that I've seen the biggest run on over the years, and then all the other fuels pretty much afterward. Things like Coleman fuel or white gas, things like your butane, your isopropyl mixes of different fuels for different camping related items, rechargeable stuff, and then recently here I've noticed it with solar stuff that charges solar, but batteries, flashlights, anything that produces light or heat. Propane, and another thing with propane is I've seen a lot of not just the propane bottles. Well, the 1 pound propane bottles seem to go first, but then there's also runs on the hoses and the hookups to hook those smaller appliances over to larger propane bottles. 20 pounders, 30 pounders, 100 pounders, 40 pounders, these things. I have seen a lot of that over the years where people will kind of 4 or 5 days will go by, people will run out of all those 1 pound cylinders. Now you can refill those 1 pound cylinders, but they're never quite as full as what they were when they were brand new. But then you see people saying, hey, I got all these 1 pound cylinders here. I want to switch over to a larger tank of gas. And then those items that go over to those larger tanks of gas, your hoses, your adapters, those are another thing that I've seen a lot of runs on over the years. And talking about heat and being able to regulate temperatures are another thing that I've seen multiple runs on over the years. Not just when it's cold outside where people are buying supplemental heaters, or they have some problem with their furnace, or they don't have a wood stove. They have some way to stay warm. That supplemental heat is huge. And then on the flip side of that, when there's massive heat waves, anything to stay cool at that particular point in time, I've also seen massive runs on over the years, whether it's small window air conditioners, it's fans, anything to stay cool and anything to stay warm, I've seen a lot of runs on. And the cool and warm thing, I'm going to throw one more thing out here that I've never really heard anybody talk about. Car batteries. Car batteries will always, if you got a weak car battery, the first 0 degree Fahrenheit day or colder you get, your battery's going to die. And if you want to see a busy auto parts store or a busy auto battery place, go in there on the first day when it's 10 below zero outside. It's going to be lined up with people because those batteries are going to die in those vehicles in those colder temperatures. Nothing kills an automotive battery quicker, or a tractor battery or whatever. Any of those larger batteries, nothing kills that quicker than cold weather. That's another thing that I have seen, massive runs on. People will need to go get supplies, get things. They'll jump in their truck that's got a weak battery in it. Now their battery's dead. And that goes back to what I've said before, where SHTF is going to be a series of compounded problems. The next thing is medical and hygiene. Now, these are things, and another thing, you don't hear a lot of people talk about these, but if you don't have no electricity for a week or two, you're going to start piling up your laundry. You're going to start, having problems, taking showers, getting cleaned up, cleaning dishes, whatever. You're going to see those things. So now you're getting into stuff like paper plates, so you don't have to wash things, disposable silverware, so you don't have to use water or anything to clean that stuff up. Stuff like garbage bags to keep your refuse in order. Soaps, detergents, all this stuff becomes, the longer the event goes on, everybody's got a bottle of dish soap at their house, right? But do you have enough dish soap to clean these dishes, for multiple weeks on end? Do you have enough paper plates there so you don't even have to use that dish soap? So now you have some type of redundancy in it. These type of things. Medicine is another thing. The pharmacies have got to be open for you to get your medication. the systems have to work. If the power's out, even if they would take cash, they can't run that stuff through the insurance systems and whatever. I have seen multiple different times when there was storms, when there was power outages and stuff, people needed their medication. And they, of course, people don't think ahead. So, they only had maybe 4 days worth of medication at home. Oh, I'll get that the next time I go to the store. And now there's a 5, 6, 7 day power outage. They can't get that stuff. Now they're scrambling, looking, maybe even driving, 50, 100 miles to go to a different pharmacy to get that stuff filled. And that's why it's very important that if you take any life-saving medication, you have a backup of that. You have some type of redundancy built into that. Water is another thing. Bottled water, I've seen multiple runs on bottled water, all of them related back to some type of either power outage again or natural event. Again, if you live in some type of municipality that has a water tower, you got a certain amount of water in that water tower until the pumps can't pump that water back up into that water tower anymore. So there's a small window when you would still have water after a power outage if you have a water tower locally. And then after that, that goes away. Now people need water to drink. And a lot of people don't think ahead to keep a certain amount of water on hand. So now they're scrambling again for water. And the easiest and most convenient thing is to go into all your different, big box stores, Dollar General, whatever, and buy up all the bottled water. And again, that's even more important when it's hot outside. Getting back to the, everybody talks about, staying warm when it's cold, but I have seen just as crazy as stuff during heat waves as I have during cold snaps. And then food. Now, I never seen a massive run on food until 2020, and it's sort of built into it. Now, there's been different times when I've seen runs on kind of your bread, eggs, milk, the kind of stuff that the fresh stuff that people would get if there's going to be a snowstorm. They might be snowed in for 2 or 3 days. Those things, the fresh items, stuff like fresh meat or, sandwich meat to, make sandwiches, ham, turkey, this kind of stuff. I've seen different runs, smaller runs on that over the years, but it was always on the fresh stuff. I never seen a run on food, non-perishable stuff until 2020. And then it was sort of a build up. I could see things starting to tip and people starting to panic buy and go for runs on different items about 4 days or so before it actually hit. And when it hit, it took a very short period of time. I know people say, oh, well, the grocery stores, they got 9 days or 72 hours, whatever it is. I'm here to tell you, within 2 days, the stores were stripped. The big stores were stripped first. And then within 48 hours, people decided they were going to hit the smaller mom and pop stores. Then they were stripped. It was a very, very short window from full counters with anything you could possibly want to almost nothing. That was like 2 days. And there were people, I live in a small town. There were literally people that were driving 100 miles to come up here to our small town to strip our local grocery store empty. And I seen this firsthand. And that's when things were right at the edge. They were right at the tipping point. So food is something, especially non-perishable type stuff, like your rice and your canned stuff and pasta. These are all things, canned meats, dried stuff, dehydrated items. These are things that use everything else up first before you use that stuff, because that stuff is going to keep the longest. And another thing that I seen in 2020 is you had the big run on anything gardening related, anything where people could produce their own food, anything canning related. These were all things that after the food people went back to these older skills, and there were runs on that stuff. So you've seen runs on, your basic prepper and homesteading type items were the next thing that went. Another thing was car parts. Cars still broke down people still needed to get to work. They needed to get from point A to point B. And you would think that gas would be the thing that would be the big run, but I'll tell you what, car parts or the lack of service on vehicles put more people in a bind than not being able to find regular unleaded fuel to put inside their gas tanks. I seen a lot of people having problems with vehicles and fixing vehicles and stuff in that 2020 to 2021 time period because of those massive disruptions, because everything slowed down and stopped. So those are some of the things that I have noticed over the years. They're the things that I think that people should have redundancy in their systems. They should have extra at home. They should have extra at their bug out location or wherever they decide to weather the storm in. Those are the things that people really need to keep their eye on, because they're the things that I have seen personally over the years having runs on stuff. And there were certain items that sat in those stores during those runs that nobody could care less about. The stuff just sat there. It became basically worthless. Nobody would buy the stuff. But anyway, this is Modern Refugee, just sharing some of my experiences with you guys here to hopefully benefit you guys in the future. Appreciate each and every one of you guys out there. You guys take care.